Wind comes first, wild, merciless, carrying a woman the world has cast aside. A widowed rancher stops beneath the thunder, not for charity, not for lust, but for something quieter, the chance to remember what mercy feels like. Rediscovers souls both punished by the past meet on a road where nothing good ever lingers, and still something begins to breathe. Is aping. Our own. The wind came like judgment, hard, cold, unyielding. It tore across the Wyoming plains, dragging a wall of rain behind it that hammered the earth until the road itself began to melt into mud. Every trail tells a story. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory, but most just wanted a place to call their own. It tore across the Wyoming plains, dragging a wall of rain behind it that hammered the earth until the road itself began to melt into mud. Every drop stung like truth. Through that storm walked a woman who had nowhere left to go. Her name was Eliza Barrett, though no one had called her that in months, and she moved barefoot, head bowed, hair plastered to her cheeks. She carried a small canvas bag against her chest, all she owned rattling within. A half-toothed comb, a Bible with missing pages, a shawl that had forgotten warmth. The storm didn't frighten her. It did. The storm didn't whisper her name with scorn or laughter. It didn't ask questions, didn't remember her sins. It just was honest and cruel. By dusk, her vision blurred to gray. A church rose through the downpour, white paint peeling, steeple leaning, the cross above it tilting as though even God had grown weary. She climbed the steps, trembling, her fingers numb, and sank beneath the porch. For a moment, she let herself believe peace might last until morning. But peace, in towns that remember your name, never lasts. The door creaked. A woman stepped out, apron soaked, broom in hand, face red with righteousness. Do you think you can hide here, Eliza Barrett? This ain't no brothel. Eliza's lips parted, but her voice was thin as rain. Just need to rest. Haven't eaten. You should have thought of that before working for Miss Lillian's girls. The broom swung like a verdict. Ow! Eliza stepped back into the storm. The mud swallowed her feet, her breath came shallow, and the rain erased her tracks before she could take another step. She didn't cry. She'd run out of tears long ago. But the cold that still found her. Then came a sound through the storm, a deep, steady rhythm. Hooves. A horse emerged from the dark, black as judgment, steam rising from its flanks. The rider was broad-shouldered, oilskin coat glistening, hat brim low enough to hide his eyes. He reined in, studying her the way a man studies weather, quiet, assessing. You got a name. His voice was low, carved from gravel and distance. Eliza, she managed. Barrett. You from me. She shook her head.
Anyone waiting on you?
He nodded, as though confirming what the wind had already told him. Lightning flared, showing a scar along his jaw, half hidden by a beard that had seen too many winters. Name's Jed Cross, he said. Got a ranch 5 miles west. 2 girls, 1 6, 1 near 3. He said it like a man reciting facts he no longer knew how to feel. My wife passed last winter. Eliza's heart stuttered. The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before. Dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage. The kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory. But most just wanted a place to call their own. The words carried no plea, no sorrow, just truth. Grief, when it's old, doesn't shout, it whispers. I ain't looking for a lover, he said flatly. Ain't got time for courting either. But my girls need someone kind, someone who can cook, keep the place, hold 'em when they cry. He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes weren't soft, but they weren't cruel either. You look like you need a roof. I need someone who won't steal, won't scare my girls, that's all. Eliza stared at him, rain dripping from her lashes. You don't even know me. I don't need to. Jed said some folks fall through cracks they didn't make. She swallowed. I worked for Miss Lillian, she said. Cleaned, looked after the children. Never one of her girls. I ain't asking about your past, he said, quieter now. And I won't if you don't ask about mine. Between them, the rain fell harder, as if the sky itself wanted to drown what little hope had begun to breathe. Then he reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a folded blanket. You can say no, he said, and we'll forget this ever happened. But if you want to come, there's a fire waitin', a meal, a bed with a roof. Nothing promised, but it'll be yours. The thunder rolled across the valley. Eliza hesitated, one step between damnation and something that might almost be grace. Then she took the blanket. I'll come, she said. Jed didn't smile, didn't soften. Just nodded once, steady as a promise. The horse shifted as she mounted behind him. Her fingers brushed the edge of his coat, rough, cold, human. Together they rode into the storm, two silhouettes bound not by faith or fortune, but by need. The cabin waited where the creek bent west, half hidden by willows. Smoke rose from a crooked chimney, thin and uncertain. To Eliza, it looked like mercy. Jed dismounted, tied the horse, then opened the door. The air inside was thick with quiet, not cold, but hollow, like a room that hadn't heard laughter in too long. Two little girls sat near the hearth. The older, Claire, held a rag doll with a missing arm. The younger, Emma, peeked from behind her sister, thumb in mouth. They're yours, Eliza asked softly. Jed nodded. Claire and Emma. Neither spoke. Claire's stare was sharp, the kind of look that measures whether someone's safe to love. You'll sleep in the back room, Jed said. Used to be hers, still some linen left. Eliza nodded. The ghost of his wife hung in the air like a scent that refused to fade. That night, she cooked what she found: beans, potatoes, pickled beets. The girls ate slow, eyes flicking between her and their father. Jed said nothing, yet his silence filled the room more than words could. When the children were asleep, Eliza stepped onto the porch, washing her hands in a basin beneath the stars. You don't talk much, she said. Jed leaned in the doorway. Talkin' don't fix things. No, she said, drying her hands. But sometimes it keeps the hurt from echoing. He didn't reply. Only the wind did soft, almost kind, brushing past them like a ghost that wasn't ready to leave. Days passed. Eliza scrubbed floors, patched curtains, mended what the winter had broken. The girls watched from corners. Emma, curious. Claire, cautious. When Eliza hummed, it was barely above a whisper, but the sound filled the house like the first fire after a long cold. Still, whispers followed her in town. She's from that house, folks said. Not fit for a widower's memory. He humming ol, but never answered. One gray afternoon, she found a folded blue blanket in a chest, frayed, soft, stitched with love. She carried it to the porch, held it to her chest like something holy. Jed joined her, boots muddy from the field. She made that for Claire, he said, before she stopped smiling. He didn't look at her. She'd sit quiet for hours, just knittin'. When she went, I thought maybe if I kept it close, she'd come back. Eliza didn't speak. She didn't need to. She just set the blanket across her lap and looked toward the horizon, where the rain had stopped, but the earth still wept. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft as dusk. You can't fix what's gone, Jed, but you can make something new out of what's left. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, something unguarded flickered behind his eyes. That night, when the fire crackled low and the wind whispered through the willows, the house exhaled. And somewhere deep in its bones, two broken lives, still wary, still wounded, began to learn the shape of belonging. Dawn comes to a house still haunted by grief. A widower who forgot how to hope. A woman who forgot how to be forgiven. Between chores and silence, between danger and whispers, they learn the first rule of mercy, that love is not taken, it's earned, one heartbeat at a time. And he has entered them to be together. Morning came slow, the kind of quiet dawn that felt unsure whether it belonged to the living. Eliza woke to the sound of wind against the shutters, soft, searching. She lay there, still half in dream, before opening her eyes to a room washed in pale gold. The bed beneath her was soft, the pillow faintly scented with lavender and sorrow. For a long while, she just lay there, listening. The house breathed differently now, not steady, not peaceful, but trying. A start. She rose, her bare feet meeting cold wood, and washed in the basin by the cracked mirror. The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before. Dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage, the kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory, but most just wanted a place to call their own. Alive was enough. Down the hall came the murmur of small voices. Eliza followed it. Two little girls by the hearth, Claire combing a rag doll's hair, Emma watching like she might break it by looking too hard. They froze when Eliza stepped in. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice sounded too gentle for the silence it entered. Claire said nothing. Emma peeked from behind her sister's arm. Eliza smiled, faint, careful, then turned toward the stove. The fire took slow coaxing, a stubborn belly of iron and ash. She breathed life into it, one stick at a time, until orange filled the shadows. Soon the smell of coffee drifted through the air, and bread warmed on the pan. Jed came in from the chill, hat low, coat dripping with dew. He paused in the doorway, eyes on the table. "Smells decent," he muttered. That was all. They ate in quiet, the kind of quiet that's not empty but watchful. Only the scrape of forks, the hiss of fire, the small sighs of waking life. When Jed rose to go, he said, "If you need something, ask Claire. She knows where things are." Then he tipped his hat and stepped back into the day. Eliza watched him ride out through the window. The sight left her heart strange, half relief, half ache. The silence that followed felt heavy, but no longer cruel. By noon, she had swept the porch, washed the linens, hung them in the breeze that smelled faintly of pine and creek water. Every motion she made was careful, measured, the ritual of someone who feared mistakes, might call the world's anger back down upon her. Then came a sound behind her, small feet in the dust. Emma stood there, doll in hand. "Would you like to help?" Eliza asked. The little girl hesitated, then nodded once, solemn as a prayer. Together they hung the sheets, white ghosts fluttering in the wind. When Emma laughed that high, sudden laugh that only children can make, Eliza froze. It had been years since she'd heard a sound like that. Music, almost. She smiled without meaning to. From the doorway, Claire watched, arms crossed tight. Her face said what her mouth didn't. You can make her laugh, but that don't mean you belong here. Then she turned and went inside. Eliza's smile faded, replaced by something quieter, understanding. Later, as the afternoon waned, Eliza found the pantry near bare. beans, salt pork, a single jar of honey. Enough to feed them, if stretched thin. She decided on stew. The rhythm of cooking steadied her. The smell filled the cabin, warm, rich, human. When Jed returned, twilight behind him, he paused at the door as though the scent itself stopped him. He took off his hat, eyes unreadable. "Didn't expect supper this early," he said. "Figured it might help," she replied, with Sunedada. He nodded. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then his gaze drifted toward the back hall, the door to the room that used to be hers. "You can change the linens," he said finally. "I don't mind." Eliza hesitated. "All right." Something softened in his face, gratitude or grief, she couldn't tell.
They ate by the fire that night.
Emma asked for seconds. Claire ate quietly, but her shoulders weren't so tight anymore. Jed said little, but his silence felt gentler somehow, less like a wall, more like shelter. When Emma spilled her milk, Eliza reached first. "It's all right, sweetheart," she said. "No harm done." Her tone was light, natural, the sound of a woman remembering kindness. Jed looked up at her then, just for a breath too long, before lowering his gaze. Later, when the children slept, Eliza stepped out onto the porch. The night smelled of damp earth and rain far off. Jed joined her, the lamplight from inside spilling warm around them. "You've done good by them," he said. She blinked, surprised. "They sleep easier," he added. "That's something." It was the first kindness he'd spoken aloud. Simple words, but they sank deep. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once, eyes on the horizon. Then he walked into the dark, lantern swinging low. Eliza stood there a while, feeling the echo of his words long after he was gone. It was nothing. A long days folded into weeks. The house began to breathe again. Eliza's touch softened its corners. Fresh curtains, clean boards, laughter now and then from the kitchen. The girls began to thaw. Emma followed her like a shadow. Claire still held back, but the sharpness in her eyes was fading, replaced by something cautious and wondering. One afternoon, while sweeping, Eliza heard Claire's voice behind her. "Why do you sing sad songs?" Eliza turned. "They're not sad," she said, "just quiet. Some songs have to be quiet to be heard." "Sir." Claire thought on that, then nodded once, a truce in silence. That evening, Jed came home later than usual. Dust covered his coat, exhaustion in his shoulders. He set his gloves on the table, eyes finding the mended roof through the window. "You fixed that?" he asked. "God, I couldn't stand the rain coming in." He shook his head. "Didn't ask you to." Their eyes met, steady, unspoken. Then a ghost of a smile.
They see these clean.
"Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." Something in the air shifted. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was trust, learning how to stand again. Again the station. That night brought another storm, softer, but restless. Eliza couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, mending Emma's dress. When the thunder rolled, the little girl appeared in the doorway, clutching her blanket. "Eliza," she whispered.
The thunder's loud.
Emma crawled into her lap. Eliza held her, humming low, steady, an old tune that felt older than her sins. The child's breathing slowed, her thumb finding its way to her mouth. Soon she was asleep against Eliza's heart. In the shadows, Jed stood watching. He said nothing, didn't move. But when Emma murmured "Mama" in her sleep, his jaw tightened. He turned away before the sound could undo him. It'll very age. By morning, the world was washed clean.
The sky clear, the earth damp and new.
Eliza stood on the porch, mug in hand. Jed joined her, quiet, hat tipped back. "Girl still sleepin'." For now, the breeze carried the smell of pine and river stone. Neither spoke for a while. Then Jed said, "You make it feel different here." Emulation she turned, brow furrowed, different how? The wind rolls across the open plains, whispering stories of men who came before. Dust rises beneath the hooves of tired horses, and the sun bleeds gold across the endless sky. Out here, names don't matter much. What counts is courage. The kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. Every campfire hides a memory. Some came for gold, others for glory. But most just wanted a place to call their own. The kind that shows when the odds are long and the bullets are few. She looked away, pretending to sip her coffee. He watched her, then said, "I don't know what you've been through, Eliza Barrett. Don't much care either. But I reckon whatever it was, it didn't break you." Her breath caught, eyes bright. He shifted, cleared his throat, then stepped off the porch toward the stables. Eliza stayed, the morning light warming her face, and when the wind brushed past, gentle now, like a blessing, she closed her eyes and smiled. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was beginning to belong. Night falls quiet over Eden's Hollow, too quiet to trust. A wind rises, carrying the smell of smoke, the taste of reckoning. When the barn burns, the truth burns with it. The pain they hid, the love they feared, and the ghosts that won't stay buried. At dawn, the world will be covered in ash, and yet something tender will rise from it, unbroken, unafraid, and true. The night was still, that uneasy stillness that makes a person listen harder than they mean to. Inside the cabin, the fire in the hearth had burned low, its light soft and flickering like an old man's breath. Jed sat half asleep in his chair by the door, book unopened on his knee. Eliza stitched quietly near the window, needle catching the glow of the embers. The girls were asleep, small shadows beneath quilts. Then the wind changed. It came dry, sharp, and wrong, carrying the faint scent of smoke. Eliza lifted her head. "Jed," she said, barely a whisper. He was already awake. A moment later came the sound, a crack, a hiss, then the sharp pop of timber catching flame. Jed was on his feet before she could move. "The barn," he said, grabbing his coat. He was out the door in 3 strides, the darkness beyond pulsing orange. "Stay inside, Howers," he shouted, but she didn't. The smell of burning hay and horses hit her like a blow. Eliza ran after him, shawl over her shoulders, skirts whipping in the wind. The barn roof glowed like a dying sun, flames climbing the walls in hungry waves. Jed hauled water from the barrel, throwing bucket after bucket against the inferno. The horses screamed inside, wild, trapped, terrified. "Get back!" he yelled. But Eliza had already heard it, a desperate, panicked cry. Shadow, the black mare, the one his late wife had raised, the one he'd called the last piece of her still brethren. Without thinking, Eliza ran into the fire. Smoke wrapped her throat, heat clawed at her skin. She stumbled forward, coughing, eyes watering. "Easy, girl," she croaked. "It's me." The mare reared, eyes rolling white, hooves cracking the boards. Eliza reached for the latch. It burned through her palm, but she didn't stop. The metal screamed as it gave way. The horse bolted through the opening, almost knocking her down. "The mousin to a turdy yet." Jed's voice ripped through the smoke. He caught her as she fell, dragging her out just as a beam collapsed behind them with a thunderous crash. They hit the dirt together, coughing, gasping, his arms tight around her. Her hand blistered, her face streaked with soot. But she was alive. "She's safe," she rasped. "Shadows safe." Jed looked at her, hair tangled, face streaked with ash, eyes burning brighter than the fire behind them. He wrapped his coat around her arm, voice shaking. "You could have died. So could she." He swallowed hard. You don't understand. That horse. I know, she whispered. That's why I went. For a long moment they just stared, the fire crackling, rain beginning to fall in slow, fat drops. Then something broke inside him, not in anger, in awe. He lifted her face gently in his calloused hand, thumb brushing soot from her cheek. You're a damn fool, he murmured. She smiled weakly. You picked me up out of the mud. Guess that makes two. He exhaled, rough, shaking, full of everything he hadn't said. And then, finally, he kissed her. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't perfect. It was quiet, the kind of kiss born not from want, but from understanding. When they pulled apart, the barn had fallen to its knees in flame. Behind them, the rain began to fall harder, washing the ash into the earth. Inside the cabin, the girls stirred in their sleep, and for the first time, Jed Cross let his grief burn itself out. You split the medical nabe, scriptures, becomes an quarreled under dexas, and a fish ties into where is what strides to rise able to hating between Auburns, and I may perverse you, and but dare you, here would you egg. The next morning, the world looked new and broken all at once. Ash clung to the grass. The air smelled of rain and ruin. Jed walked the charred remains in silence, boots sinking into mud. Eliza stood on the porch, arm bandaged, watching. When he came back, he said simply, "Could have lost it all." She nodded. "Could have." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Routed to, but we didn't, 'cause you wouldn't let go." He said it plain, but it landed like a vow. The days after were slow, tender.
Her burns healed, the girl's laughter returned.
Jed worked long hours rebuilding what was lost, while Eliza mended what couldn't be nailed back together. The house, the land, began to look alive again. Then, one gray afternoon, while tidying the old bedroom, Anna's room, Eliza found a letter tucked behind a loose board. The paper was yellowed, the ink trembling. To Jedediah, only if I cannot say it aloud. Her fingers shook as she unfolded it. The wind rolls across the open plain.
Jed,
If you're reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to tell you myself. I don't know what's wrong with me. Every day I look at Claire and feel like I'm watching someone else's child. I want to love her, but my chest feels heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. When Emma came, I thought the darkness would pass. It didn't. You try so hard. You carry all of us. I wish I could be more than a burden. Please forgive me if I fail you, if I fail them. I'm trying, Jed. I promise I'm trying. Eliza read it twice, tears falling freely now. The pain in those lines was familiar, not the same, but kin. She pressed the letter to her heart, whispering a prayer for a woman she'd never met, but somehow understood. That night, she handed the letter to Jed without a word. He read it slowly, eyes flicking over every shaky line. When he reached the end, his hands trembled. She never told me, he whispered. She didn't know how, Eliza said softly. He stared at the paper like it was a wound that had finally started bleeding again. I thought it was me, he murmured. Thought I wasn't enough. You were, she said. She just couldn't find her way back. He nodded, eyes glistening. After a long silence, he said, I want to bury it, not to forget, to let her rest. Eliza nodded. I know where. Rain began again as they walked down to the creek. The ground was soft beneath their boots. At the garden's edge, near the violets Eliza had coaxed from the wild soil, Jed knelt. He dug a small hollow and laid the letter inside, covering it with slow, steady hands. This land was hers, he said quietly. Then it was empty. Now it's yours, and alive again. Eliza knelt beside him, palm pressed to the damp earth. Jed placed his hand over hers. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The creek murmured beside them, the rain soft as forgiveness. And there, between grief and grace, they buried the last ghost. So easily exponed, obviously. Station for sung ants. This. Weeks passed. The sky turned from gray to gold, the hills breathing with new grass. Eliza's scars faded to pale silver. The girls played barefoot in the yard. Jed laughed again, not loud, not often, but real. And though neither said the word, love had settled between them like something ancient, the kind that doesn't have to announce itself to be known.